We are live. Welcome, everybody, to another Wine and Comics pairing show. Once again, we're going to play our wonderful opening. You all know and love it. You have to hum it in your head. It's not good enough to hum it in your head. Let's go.
I love that animation with the wine glass. It's like,
thank you.
Only
that
the
was
best.
All me.
once it's empty, it's got to get filled again. That's just
you got to get filled again. And it's funny that on the subject of that theme song, when I made my first version of what I thought the opening would be, it was like this classy acoustic guitar, classy
is a stretch.
I'm not even
Calm
sure,
down.
like painting with Bob Ross kind of a thing. It was just this and everyone I showed it to, they're like, "Isn't that kind of calm? Don't you want something a little more, And I'm like, no, but okay, let me see what I can find in public domain. And then I found that thing, and everyone I showed it to just started laughing the moment it started playing. And I'm like, all right, so I guess I think that's going to be our theme song. And I think it's called the Babushka song or something like that.
Yeah.
Like it
kind of
you almost got to do that Cossack, dance while it's going on.
It's got those goofy Adam Family Value vibes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There you go. So everyone, welcome to another Wine and Comics pairing show. This is the third of 6 live streams about the Hospice comics. Today we have Frank Martin with us, who did the Catskill Cannibal Hospice one-shot. Once again, for those just joining us or have been living under a rock for the past couple of weeks, the Hospice series of Kickstarter one-shots. These are 6 standalone one-shots that all take place in a shared universe. To our knowledge, this has never really been done before on Kickstarter. As Kevin Joseph, the creator of Tart. So if you're in the comics Kickstarter world, you know of Kevin Joseph, you know of Tart. He liked to say the worst idea ever to do these Hospice comics. He's like, no one's going to understand this. No one's going to get what it is. I don't know why you're doing this. But I have to say, it's just a super cool idea regardless. And so far, Frank, the last time I checked earlier today, you were a hair's breadth from being funded. Are you funded at this point?
I'm like $300 or so.
300. You're still okay. So you're a hair's breadth from funding. Jamie funded yesterday. I believe both Kickstarters from last week are now funded. So, say it's the worst idea in the world, but so far, so freaking good. I mean, everyone's pretty much there, and it's only begun. So, Frank, you've been on the Wine and Comics pairing show before. You are our first repeat guest.
That's great.
So we are very proud to have reached this milestone and to give you that honor.
Thank you. I feel like that's a reoccurring theme with me. For some reason, I'm a lot of people's first reoccurring guest. I guess.
Really, I think you're I think it's
you've got a thing. You've got a thing.
I think people like me,
and they like.
I gotta brag to my wife. These people actually want to talk to me and have me around.
So for the people who did not see or have not seen any of your shows, just to make sure that we're covering our basic bases, 5 minutes or less, tell us about yourself, your journey as a creator, and what led you into comics of all things. A lot of the times because you're a writer in many different mediums and many different formats. Comics has been something you've been very hardcore about for the last couple of years, but falling into something like comics, is it just the passion for it? Do you just love doing it? Because it's not a lot of money and it's a lot of hard work and it's, a lot of collaborative effort. Do you just love the hard work and the collaborative effort? Why comics? Why, and how did you get to where we are today?
So I've always considered myself a writer and a storyteller. I started writing in middle school or elementary school, which is when most students and kids start writing. And I just kind of never stopped. And what we wrote in elementary school was prose stories. So that's kind of what I always wrote. But I always read comics. So at some point, I turned my writing for loving stories. I'm like, I like reading comics. Let me try writing them too. And it's quite difficult. Not as easy as it seems. And I write novels. I write screenplays. I write comics. As you said, I've been focusing on comics lately simply because I've found a little bit of an audience there. I've gotten a lot of reception and feedback. I still write other stuff, but I've slowly been building up my Kickstarters per year. Now I think I run like 6 a year. So I get pretty busy, and I think you got to have a passion for it. I don't think anybody's like, I hate comics, but it's a job. So I'll just keep on doing it.
Yes. There's a I was just listening to a podcast shortly before coming on this show, and it was about filmmaking and doing your first feature, doing short films, doing a feature film, and like indie film for the most part. And there was a brilliant quote that I think pertains especially to comics, but really to any creative pursuit. But I think indie film and indie comics are the two things that, like, it costs so much money, just the barrier of entry, like to create the product itself. But he basically said, you need to do this for 1/3 the money you think you need to do it for. You're not going to make that money back, and probably it's not going to do anything for your career. If you can stomach all of those things and you still want to do it, then you deserve to do it. And you need to continue to stomach that until one or all of those things starts to melt away.
Kinda, yeah. I mean, most people I know who become
nice.
successful in comics, they couldn't really tell you how they did it. They just kept doing the thing until the thing started to work, you know? So I had a bunch of Kickstarters that were struggled in the beginning. I still think that I got a long way to go, but you kind of, you just keep doing it until you realize you're doing it. And it's like weightlifting, you know, it's hard in the beginning, but eventually you build up muscle and you build up strength, and then you find a new milestone to climb.
Yeah.
Right. Always. So from your POV, this brings us to Hospice, which is your latest. And from your POV, how did this come about? How did you get involved? And then we'll talk about the creative process for it. But like, so this all started from what I've heard from our previous interviews, approximately about a year ago.
A little over a year ago. Yeah, I would say.
Okay.
Travis Gibb it's his brainchild. I shouldn't even say that because it was such like a kernel. It was a nugget of an idea that he had. He wanted to do an anthology without doing an anthology. He wanted everybody to do their separate thing, but everybody be kind of connected. So he approached it more from the business side of things, I guess. But he did have the idea of a hospice, taking in sinful people to nurture whatever demon is growing inside of them. And as soon as he told me that, I had a million logistical questions as to how this is going to work. I was like, is this a metaphorical demon? Is it a literal demon? Does it have to have the same shape as him? And then I think I really annoyed him when I started asking about the corporate structure of the hospice. I'm like, are these franchises? Are they publicly traded?
Yes.
Like, what's and he's like, dude, I haven't gotten that far yet. I have no idea.
Right.
So then he recruited a whole bunch of people. We got in a whole bunch of Zoom meetings together. And then over the course of a year, we kind of narrowed out a business plan. We all came up with our respective stories, how things are going to work, like funding goals and connecting covers and stuff like that. And it slowly came together after a while, and now we're here.
Awesome. Yeah, when we were talking to Jamie yesterday, she had we didn't realize from reading, because we haven't read Travis's Hospice yet. He still has to come on and send us that comic, but we read Russell's, we've read Jamie's or the amount of Jamie's that's done at this point, and now yours. And after reading Russell's, we weren't sure. We were like, oh, so this is all one hospice, one place. And it was Jamie that was like, well, no, it's shared universe, but multiple locations. The hospice is an extended franchise.
I would call them branches.
Branches.
So it's a loose affiliation of. We haven't narrowed down that structure yet, but for the most part, people can buy into the hospice organization and the theme and open up their own Rising Suns Hospice. And that was the kind of jumping off point that each person can have their own hospice, Rising Suns Hospice, around the world. So it worked out that way so that we didn't have to do a whole lot of cross-pollination of storytelling. You know, we could each have our own little corner of this universe to do whatever we wanted.
Right. Makes sense.
Cool. And how did you come up with your story with Catskill Cannibal? And
actually, before we get there, like I have to say this is right up my alley, there, buddy. I love all things cannibal. In fact, I've got a stack of like 4 screenplays I've written that are all sort of based on cannibals because I think the cannibal is underutilized.
This probably says something about my taste in people because Dallas is my West Coast best friend.
Your taste in people, no pun intended.
Nope, total pun intended. So Dallas is my West Coast best friend. I have another best friend that I call my East Coast, my college best friend. He just recently, he's so into cannibal movies right now. I had to send him a list of cannibal movies. And when Dallas just mentioned that, I'm like, oh yeah, I sent you. No, that's my other best friend. I'm like, oh God, these are my best friends. And they're like, we love cannibal everything.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like,
love
all right,
love it,
all right.
It's only a matter of time before they go on a date, and date is the meal.
Right. Sorry, buddy.
It's like, so we're just going to keep this relationship on Zoom, Dallas, if you don't mind,
right.
from this point forward.
Exactly. So how did you move into the story? Like, what came first? Was it?
I always say, like, write what you know. And I don't know cannibalism.
Right? What you know, really? Okay.
No, but I'm a New York guy, and this is kind of my wheelhouse. The Catskills.
Oh, and I love the Catskills. I just got back from the Catskills like 2 days ago.
It's a lovely place, and I've spent a lot of time there. I've spent a lot of time in New York City, so sometimes I base stories around this area. And the Catskills is the home to the world-renowned Culinary Institute of America, which is is featured in the story. Yeah. And what you find is a lot of the people that attend the school fall in love with the region, you know, and they either meet somebody there, and when they graduate, they don't leave. They just kind of open up a nice 5-star restaurant in the area. And
it's great food. That's true.
Yeah, it's weird because the Catskills, it's not a heavily urban populated area, and yet you got these amazing restaurants that are scattered all over the place. And so I wanted to use
is
that.
Is it the money? Like, this is where all the vacation. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I don't think it's the money. I just think it's a beautiful place. And it's weird because I know a guy who I went to high school with him. He went to the CIA, and then he opens up. I have to be specific. CIA is the Culinary Institute. I'm not saying he became a spy,
right?
But he.
Although there's a great show in there somewhere. But go on.
I went to his restaurant. And I said, so you must be popping in the wintertime. He goes, no, actually, because everybody goes skiing in the Catskills. Right. And he said, no, actually, the summer and the spring is busier for me because that's just people coming up here for hiking and they want to go restaurant hopping. And so, yeah, it's a big thing. And I think it's just the region, you know, it's just a nice mountainous area. It's nice skiing in the winter and it's beautiful in the summer. So they just kind of
it's just so antithetical to New York itself that it's a different world. Like,
it is. It's totally different from the city.
Yeah.
You can go to the city and be part of the rat race, but there's just something slower about upstate New York and chefs that really want to get into their art like it. So I wanted to use that as the jumping off point, the setting for the book. And I don't know, the name Catskill Cannibal really pops in my head. I'm like, I got to run with this. Whatever this is, I have to put these two ideas together. And slowly but surely, the book was born.
Did you have the title and then you decided this was a hospice story? Or did you know you needed to come up with a hospice story, then came up with the title, then fleshed out the story from there?
I can't remember. It's all muddled in here. I think I think I had the idea for the Catskill Cannibal. I just love that name. And then when Travis approached the idea, I'm like, there's some way I can put these two things together. It definitely can work. And it turned out to work really well. Actually, I think my story is pretty unique, the way that the demon and the guy have this relationship and how he fits into the hospice and all that. It did fall in very nicely. Little puzzle pieces.
Yeah. It's a fun little character.
It's going to be
a sketch for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be curious as we keep reading the other one shots, like how every writer, every creator has taken this idea and done something. Because so far, the three we've seen have been all very demonstrably different in the approach.
I don't think I could have done what Travis did. I'm a control freak perfectionist. I need to have my fingers in everything. So when he brought us together, he's like, do whatever you want. Just kind of like take this idea, make it your own. And I was really surprised by the different interpretations that everybody had. And I think that's kind of part of the appeal. They're so separate and standalone and each their own thing. And yet we're still part of like the same hospice family.
You're still connected. Yeah.
Yeah.
Travis at least had the experience training of doing the Cthulhu anthologies, the Cthulhu Invades anthologies, where same basic kind of thing, where it's, I have a story idea, but all you guys do what you want to do. I will figure out how they're all going to tether together. I will tweak it so that they tether together. But we're going to give each creative team a pretty decent, from what I've heard, a decent chunk of creative freedom.
Yeah, talking to Travis about his anthology experiences, he says he loves it, but they're a lot of work, because he really had to be on top of everybody with their stories, not necessarily controlling it, but he has to make sure that they don't contradict or that it makes sense or that they're filling in certain gaps. And this time he did the opposite approach. He kind of stepped back, and he wasn't even really, he brought us together, but during our meetings and during our planning, there was no set leader. We all contributed ideas. We all kind of threw stuff out there. And it was really a collaborative process, not just story-wise, but also how we were going to execute these campaigns, put them all together. And I think the main thing that Travis talks about is we never mix money or expenses or revenue. It's just kind of
smart,
very smart,
which makes things very
with the way a Kickstarter works, and then the way like taxes work on your Kickstarters and things like that. I mean, it would have been that. I mean, that would have been a headache. That would have been its own. If Travis thought it was a headache keeping track of the story side of an anthology, trying to keep track of that would have been like its own headache on top of that. And it's like, let's not. I really want to do something like this, but let's never ever do that. That's like hell.
And we all have different audiences too, different sizes, different ways we communicate with them. Yeah. So it would have been too difficult to make it happen. We wanted to make this as difficult as it was, as easy as possible. So
yeah. And it's funny because I think I would have, if I had been the one to brainstorm something like this, I would have been just like you in terms of, I would have thought, one, I needed to world build it first before telling anyone about, like, you had all those questions, and I'm like, those would have been all the questions I would have answered for myself before being like, okay, so here's the world, this is how it works, now we're gonna branch out from there. And I think that's how my brain works too, is I need to answer all those questions, or I feel like I haven't done my part for it, which is not a slight on Travis in any way, shape, or form. I think it's harder to just let go, to just be like, I have an idea, and you know what? I'm gonna let other people run with it. Like let's make this a collaborative process from inception, like literal inception. I have the barest bone kernel of an idea. We are gonna figure out what this is together. I'm like, damn, I could not. I don't think I have it in me, or at least maybe in the future now that I've seen this. But yeah, that would have gone against my nature.
So it's a weird thing because having read my story, you know that it's not a spoiler, but our hospice is run by a married couple, Remy and Annette Wilson. Annette kind of handles the business stuff. Remy is the chef that cooks all the meals for everybody. And I had the story in mind, but I wanted to make sure I didn't contradict with Travis's vision or anybody else's story. So those were my questions. Were like, are these franchises? Is it a corporate structure with the CEO? I want to include these people, but I didn't know how they can run their own hospice. So I needed to know the logistics. Yeah. And Travis was just kind of like, make it happen. We don't think too hard of it. And I really appreciated that. I think everybody else did too.
Yeah. Okay, so let me share a page of Frank's Kickstarter here, just so everyone can see. And yes, I am a backer. So this is the Hospice Last Supper of the Catskill Cannibal, and you can see. By the way, you had mentioned in the credits on the Kickstarter that you had done one other comic, Malady. Am I remembering that correctly with this artist?
Yes, Claudio. He's great at monsters. Yeah. So Malady is a horror comic, but I would call Hospice a fun horror comic. It's meant to be tongue-in-cheek and gory. Malady is not that. Malady is dark and brooding. And I don't know if you guys read it, but it's not the best show to talk. It's not the best comic to talk about on a wine show. It's about an alcoholic who becomes a monster every time he drinks. So
that's the perfect fodder.
That's actually perfect. Yeah, I'm actually okay with that. I don't know if everyone's okay with that, but I'm okay with that.
So
100%.
It's a very dark story. It's a very serious story, but Claudio does monsters phenomenally. So when I came to this story about a fat, grotesque cannibal and the demon living inside of him, I'm like, I want to see what he could do with something that's more fun, that's more out there, that's meant to wallow in its depravity and not be saddened by it.
And I will say, I mean, Claudio's art on this one, I was blown away by it. I was just like, this is perfect for this comic. Not only the grotesquerie of the Catskill cannibal himself, and what he's supposed to be, and he did it. I mean, there's this one panel. It's not here on the page, but when they're loading him in the truck to take him to the hospice, and he's like stepping onto the transport.
It's in the preview pages if you want to go down.
It's in the preview pages. Let me go back up and see if I can see, or is that further down? Maybe
it's down. You're going up.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Preview. Here we go. Right here, where it's kind of subtle, but he does it. I saw this panel and I was like, holy crap! I can feel and hear this guy stepping into this vehicle and nearly tilting it over, like as he boards. But you can see this is. If
you go up a little, that on that page right there, I did not have that in the script. He has a little winch and a cable to kind of like help pull him.
Yes.
That was not my idea. God. That was all him. And I was like, that's pretty cool. So I love when artists get into the story and they start thinking about the dynamics of this world and fleshing it out.
It adds a completely different texture to a different life. Yeah. It lets the art breathe. It like fleshes out the story. It's just a great pairing, man.
I'm not a visual guy. People ask me for references and stuff. I'm like, I don't know. So I love giving artists a lot of freedom in terms of design. And so the design of the Catskill cannibal, the design of the demon, they're all him. And you could see he dives into stuff like this. He lives in horror. So the creepy smiles, right there, that panel where you see the Catskill cannibal, he's drooling. Like he's
just the skin texture alone. The skin texture alone. It's just
little. Perfect. It just oozes creepiness on every page.
Beautiful.
So
right. Well, I even love the smile he gives the chef right here, where it's like neither smile is exactly truly warm and friendly. I mean, they're both creepy.
There's something hiding behind both smiles.
Right.
I should remake Sex Night and have him do it. I think that would be
that would be a truly horrific Sex Night. That'll be well. You know what? You should. Okay, feel free to steal this idea if you want to, or you might hate the idea. But do like Sex Night can be like change genre, do different Sex Night one shots, like one a year, one every other year. Changes, mix the genre up and like see what kind of fun a Sex Night for any
Sex
couple
Night Halloween
is when you move into the next genre and have fun with it. I would be all in on
Sex Night by Rob Zombie.
Right.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And Matt, what is Rob Zombie's Sex Night? That is a question. So, and I know we can't show you the visual of the demon. We shouldn't, but I will say, guys, for anyone watching, it is worth the price of admission alone.
Yeah,
that fucking demon is incredibly designed, incredibly drawn. And even knowing there is a demon, it's not a spoiler.
It's the premise of the entire world.
Premise of the whole hospice thing. What is a spoiler is where the story goes. We're not even going to hint at it, but it goes somewhere that is surprising. That is a wonderful little plot twist.
It goes somewhere that's surprising a couple of times.
Yes, and pun intended. It is chef's kiss. It is fantastic. So did by any chance, because I got lots of the menu vibes from some of the setup and a little bit of the execution, not to say that this is trying to do what the menu did at all, but just sort of the setup and the fact that it is horrific in its structure and in the weird and sort of kind of the send up of high 5-star Michelin restaurant, star celebrity chefs and things like that, which the menu also kind of sends up. Did that influence? Have you seen that? And did that influence this in any way? By any chance?
When did the menu come out? And the bear too. When did that come out? I think I wrote this
last year. I believe, like
I think I wrote this
last year,
beginning of this year, end of last year.
Yeah.
I do not think either of them influenced this, because I didn't see either of them before I started writing the script or even came up with the idea. But it is weird how they do fall within that genre of, even though the bear isn't horror, it still dives into the world of culinary excellence and
the darker side of that.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's also a traditional trope you'll find with cannibalism. That's usually one of the glossier kind of treatments.
You know what I loved is the obviously influence was Hannibal, the show.
Yeah.
What was it on NBC?
Right. Yeah.
So that was a great show because I loved how meticulous he was about his craft of cooking. He really cared about it, and that is, I think, is what came through in some of the scenes where you see Remy cooking. I really wanted to get into the nitty gritty of, this is not your cannibal from The Hills Have Eyes who keeps the meat under the stairs and just pulls out a leg and starts eating. Like these are elite, classy people that want to flavor their human thighs when they cook them.
Well, it's interesting that Dallas mentioned it was a trope in cannibalism and whatnot, because cannibalism, and I'm sure that's not incorrect, but to me, it's always been Texas Chainsaw-y, is sort of the standard and the classic traditional, where it's like, it's the exact opposite of this type of a thing, where it's like, it's that rural country bumpkin family in the middle of absolutely fucking nowhere.
Yeah, Texas Chainsaw.
Right. And so we're just going to see, we barely even season the meat. We just eat it. We just cook it and eat it, kind of a thing. But then when you mentioned Hannibal, I'm like, oh yeah, Hannibal, that whole Silence of the Lambs cannibalism, that was your high class cannibal, your upper crust, upper elite cannibal.
I think it's so much scarier, because when you think of the country bumpkin cannibals, these are people that are doing it to survive. They're doing it because there's a feeling of desperation in the people that they kill and the people that they eat, which that's not this. These are eating people because they're evil people and they enjoy human flesh in their palates.
Right. Well, when there's a scene, and this also isn't really a spoiler, but when let me see if it's on these.
I only have the first 5 pages here. That's it.
First 5. Okay. So there is a page where he shows basically the menu, right? The proper menu, and he shows it to the cannibal. And I was like, who are these people on the menu? And like, how are they selected? And what, like, that brought a level of creep factor that I was like, whoa, that is actually a next level that I didn't quite expect this to go. The fact that they were like, we have a whole menu of people prepared for you. And I'm like, Jesus,
there's a moment in the story that kind of changes things, because the story starts with everybody knowing who the Catskill cannibal is, and you got this hospice that's taking him in, but you don't really know that the hospice is run by evil people. You just know that they're caring for. I mean,
are they
criminals.
Evil though? Just saying.
I mean, there's certainly a question there, but you don't know what their intentions are until that moment. They just we're going to serve you quail and pheasants and boar and all these nice, elegant, gamey meats. And once he hands them the menu full of human delicacies, that's when it turns a little bit to.
And I'll tell you, that actually brings up another question. I'm curious, what other sort of world building have you done? Is there a sketch for episode 2? Is there a backstory of the Catskill cannibals exploits? Like, how did he get here? I need it.
The answer is no and yes. So I did not come up with anything else, but being the writer that I am and loving this character in this world, I can't help but think of other things.
Good man.
Either And I actually just messaged Travis like yesterday because we're planning to do a trade of all the stories at the end. And obviously with the trade, you want to do, if you crowdfund it, you want to do something new. And I asked him, maybe it'd be cool if I just like throw in short prose stories that are prequels or sequels to all of our other hospice. So I've begun to think about what's going to happen with the Catskill Cannibal, because the story starts with him in prison, kind of like Hannibal Lecter, and he's had a whole life beforehand. I was writing this script, and I'm like, I just want to make this as stupid as possible. So I had him claim 69 victims.
Nice.
This is the opening line of the story. Nice. So I was like, I gotta flesh something out of him taking on one of these 69 victims, and it's like. Jumping into a prose story is easy. I could sit down and write 1,000 words, story's done. But comics are it's such a long endeavor. It takes so much time and so much resources. So I'm like, do I really want to do another comic like this? But a prose story would be a good way to kind of give the Catskill Cannibal some more adventures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I would say there is... to Dallas's question of like, are they evil people? Are they really? And I know he meant that partly in jest. But it's curious because again, without intimating anything about the ending, there is the hospice itself, and anyone who's looked into like what the basic premise of this hospice shared universe is knows what the hospices are for. And so what these people are doing with their particular hospice, I mean, they're still doing some pretty wicked, terrible, like, or gruesome things, but then all for a purpose where it's like, all things considered, if that's what this hospice was going to be for regardless, this is probably one of the better outcomes for humanity.
Exactly.
I like those questions when somebody says, are these characters evil? And that's not really for me to say. I mean, I have my ideas, but at the end of the day, once I make this story and I send it out to the world, everybody is allowed their own interpretation. There's no right or wrong answer to it.
That's right.
And that was another question that I had, Travis. I said, so why are these people doing this? Why are they running this hospice? And he said, well, if they're branches and everybody's opening up their own, that means everybody can have their own intentions or goals and objectives in opening up a Rising Suns hospice. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that was super cool that we can even sort of franchise out this world and give everybody else their own chance to put their spin on it.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're at the point. Dallas, you ready to hit the wine? I guess as soon as we'll take a quick pause. You need a second, Frank? No. Okay. He's good to go.
My son's we're gonna get stuffed animal.
I gotcha. So let's get started. I'll start this time and go first on what I paired with this amazing Catskills Cannibal. And this was
I'm upset I didn't come up with this title, by the way. It's so simple.
And I'm gonna say so simple. It's got that consonance. It's got that nice Catskill Cannibal.
Oh yeah.
It makes like it's a beautiful concept and sounds good on the tongue. It's just it's a brilliant title, and the concept of what this story is, and the fact that it's about cannibalism, that made it extra fun to pair something. And the fact that it's about cannibalism at a high class fine dining motif, I'm like, let's pair some wine with this baby. Here we go. So I went with something that was I figured about one thing that has held true with at least these first three hospices that we paired with, because it's horror and because these are all pretty damn creepy for what they are. Red wine, I still haven't found a better way to get away. Jamie's yesterday, I had a version of white wine that would work really well, and I think it would. But red wine is still better than anything else. So I'm like, okay, and this story in particular, because of its gruesomeness, and it is to date the most gruesome of the three we've read. I'm like, all right, this is way down the red rabbit hole, so we're sticking with red. And the where I went with this is with a style that is called Appasimento. So as you can see here I'll put this here in the chat so people can see it, but it's a Italian style, which is used elsewhere, but it's partially dehydrating the grapes before making the wine. So you partially raisin them before making the wine, and this creates a wine that has very you get much more herbal and it's much more complex flavors. You get gamey flavors out of them, which is where I was really going with that. Is it kind of, you get both this sort of herbal, like basil, rosemary, or oregano flavors, just like meat seasonings. You get a gaminess to the red wine. This wine I have here is a Primitivo from Italy, which is basically an Italian Zinfandel. They call it Primitivo there. And this is a partially dehydrated Zin. The most famous Appasimento wine out there is Amarone. And Amarone is, it tends to be on the pricier side because it's like the wine of kings. It is the one that it takes a long time to make. They age it really, really well. And it is so carefully constructed with these partially dehydrated grapes. And it is a lot. It is dense. It is chewy. It is rich. It is gamier even than what this Primitivo would be. I think this is a 2021. So this is a young one. And Amarone, they age it for years before they even release it to the public. It's one of those kinds of wines. So it's more expensive. You probably can't find much under $40 to $50 for a true blue Amarone. But Amarone would be the best pairing for this, I gotta say, because that is the one that is it's the wine of kings. It's rich, it's meaty in every meaning of that term. It's got that kind of meat seasoning, herbaceous quality to it. But if you can just find something that's a Appasimento, you're going to get a lot of those flavors thrown in there. So that's where I went with it. And it's, that partially dehydrated, that is an extra preparation element to the wine. So there's more preparation involved than your non-Appasimento style wine. And that is a big part of that sort of high quality chef thing where sometimes the preparation is a bit tortuous for no real great reason. It's just we did all these things to fluff up what we did, what we can say we did to this cuisine.
It's about the procedure and the treatment. Yeah.
Right. And it's well, that's a lot of manpower, but how much did that actually impact what I'm eating? And that's always a question. But I like that this was an extra hands-on, extra amount of prep. And you had the dish that they kind of mention all throughout the book before they get to the actual cannibalism is pheasant in raspberry cream. And
is that a real thing? I made that up. I have no idea.
No. I have no idea. I'm assuming no, but Appasimento also, this Primitivo, I picked it because it's very raspberry. It is super, and it's got the gaminess to it. So I'm if anything would taste like pheasant and raspberry cream, it's this particular one. So I'm damn, I'm sold. This is the one for this. So props to the pheasant and raspberry cream. Honestly, I want to try making it at this point because I'm just if it doesn't exist, that sounds good. That sounds delicious.
I love it.
All right, Dallas, over to you.
All right, good choice, Dave. By the way, so I worked my way into this via the culinary sort of avenue. Generally the best food in the world, and they're considered French, the best cuisine in the world. Most of our traditional methods of the culinary arts originate or somehow tether back to French cuisine. And so I decided to look for red, of course, because it's a deep red sort of world you're creating here. Love the characters. Now, the wine I chose here, of course, you can see the red. Probably dirty glass by now.
It's a pretty dirty glass, yeah.
It's pretty dirty glass. It's curious because sorry, what was that?
Oh, that's just something in the background somewhere.
Oh, all right.
Those are my dogs humping each other, if you must know.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, it's probably that. It's probably that.
Right. So the nose on this guy is really sort of earthy on the start. It turns into sort of charcoal and gets very sort of, you get charcoal briquette, you get, all this crazy stuff. You even get offal. If you guys know what offal is basically the innards of certain animals, and it has a very distinct smell. It's a very distinct smell. It's not like stinky, but it's a very distinct smell. There's some tobacco in it. Of course, it's got the core, the fruity reds. Ooh, that glass is dirty. With molasses, excuse me. The grape itself is traditionally considered an Argentinian grape, but this is a French appellation of this particular grape. And it's from a very small region. It's a very small region.
By the way, just want to interrupt you briefly, Dallas, for a quick comment here from Kevin Joseph that Frank's dogs must have been drinking from the beginning of the show. And so
that's all I feed them. I don't give them any water. Just wine and
good
kibble.
To see you, Kevin.
I love it.
Yeah.
How's it going, Kevin? So yeah, I chose this guy right here. It is the Clos Seguier Cahors. It is a French Malbec. It's kind of fantastic. It opens up very nicely. Does well with age. It is, like I said, a French Argentinian sort of blend, but not really. A French treatment of Argentinian grape, I should say. Yeah, love it. Fantastic.
I'm surprised neither of you did a Chianti.
Oh, come on. That's too on the nose. Come on.
I didn't even think of Hannibal. This is the problem. I was only thinking Texas Chainsaw when I was reading this, or maybe The Hills Have Eyes.
No, that's too on the nose. Come on.
I know. I didn't. My brain didn't go there, but I should have.
I'm not a Chianti fan, though, so I would have passed on it.
Well, try an Appasimento if you can find one of those guys. See if you. I mean, it's much richer. It's much darker. It's much more powerful than any Chianti I've ever tasted. So depending on what your issue with Chianti is, if it's too bland, which tends to be my issue with Chianti, they're too smooth. They're almost to the point of being nondescript often.
Yeah. I'm not that sophisticated. My wine vocabulary is I like it or don't like it.
Fair enough.
That's all you need.
Well,
all you need.
But you are a beer guy, and I can see you had a glass there. And
I do.
So what did you bring for us today?
So there's a local brewery that's pretty popular here. It's called Captain Lawrence. They put out a beer called Citra Dreams.
Ooh.
It's a hazy IPA with a little Citra hops in it, which is kind of right up my alley. It's not as heavy as a lot of hazy IPAs that I've had, but given that it's Citra Dreams, I thought it would be fitting to do Sandman. And I chose. I was a huge Sandman fan. I'm always fascinated whenever I meet somebody who says they don't like it, because it's an enormous epic. And I'm one of the. I would say 80% of the graphic novels I read the volume 1, and then I'm done. I don't need to go on to the second one. But with Sandman, he's got like 10, 12 volumes or something. I own them all, and I chose volume 6 for a specific reason. It's Fables and Reflections, which is basically, it's the only one I think that doesn't have its own story. It's just basically a series of one-shots. Yeah, right. And so I thought it was good having Dream have his own adventures, just basically one after another, rather than, because this is a lighter beer, so I didn't want to be sucked into a whole story, and that's why I kind of put them together.
And very apropos for a live stream about a series of one-shots. Yeah. Where that's what we're doing here. So out of all the Sandmans, that's a good one. But when people say, because I know when Sandman first came out, it was kind of a hit, but it was also like, I remember like the Sam Keith era of Sandman, like a lot of people were very torn about it. It was the comics community or the readers at the time. I was not aware. I was not of age. I could not read the Vertigo stuff quite yet. But later I saw like all the feedback that was coming in about Sandman in those early volumes. And like most people did not know what to make of it or thought it was just terrible. Like the art was terrible. The art was the writing was not like where was this going? Who are these characters? This is pretentious, doesn't have direction, blah blah blah. But these days, when you meet someone who says they don't like Sandman, like what do they say outside of just saying they don't like it? Like what is their reason for not liking it?
I get it, because it is like quirky and weird and it's its own thing, but he finds a way to take these. They're not even characters that are larger than life. They're larger than the cosmos, you know? And he finds a way to make them relatable. They have these family squabbles. And I got suckered in from the beginning to end. I read the whole story, which I usually don't do. I usually drop off with something at some point. And this fantasy world that Neil Gaiman paints is, I mean, you can see by all the praise that the Netflix show has gotten that he had a lot of hands in. Yeah. My wife doesn't read comics, but she loved the show. And when I told her that they dropped an extra bonus episode just out of nowhere, she was like, "Oh, let's go back into it." I'm like,
"Okay." Okay. Have you tried? Are you a fan of the Lucifer spinoff that came from that?
We watched Lucifer too. We did. That was we actually started it when it premiered on Fox, and then it got picked up on Netflix. And so we actually named our dog Maze. Mazikeen.
Nice.
That's what we named her. So we have one dog named Maze, another dog named Xena. So yeah, we kind of watch a lot of TV.
TV show dogs.
Hi.
All right. So Frank, to wrap us up here, Hospice is going on right now, but what can we expect from you? Well, first off, when does your Hospice campaign end? People have until
I launched yesterday for 18 days. So I think the 29th.
September 29th. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
got it.
That's how long I have. Next week we have David Byrne and Mike Watson will launch.
Yeah, right.
And so yeah, we have 6 campaigns. They're not even all live yet. So this is still we're in the middle of this little experiment that we decided to cook up.
Fantastic.
And what's next for you outside of Hospice? Do you know what's lined up next, or what's likely like what number of projects can we expect from you in the next?
I don't know.
6 months to a year or so.
I don't know. I mean, I'm still going to try to do my 6 launches a year.
Okay.
It's just I don't know what's next because I have so many things concurrently and nothing is really finished yet. So it's kind of like I have to wait and see what finishes first. But what I'm really excited about is not next year, but the year after. I'm going to devote the entire year to my series Grimspace, which is it's like a Star Wars space fantasy twist on classic fairy and folk tales. That's kind of my series that I have with Scout. So I'm looking to really expand that. Have a whole bunch of different characters, a whole bunch of different stories. So I'm going to lean heavily into that in 2025.
Look forward to that.
Awesome. All right, my man. Well, this has been great catching up. And
as always,
good luck on the remaining 17 days of your hospice campaign. And good luck to all the hospices. We will have Michael and David on next week for their 2 campaigns when they launch to do 2 more live streams. And at some point, maybe later this week, or sometime next week for sure, Travis is still going to be on. He's been busy, just got back from Baltimore, I know. So things have been, he's been hard to pin down, but he is a busy guy. So, but expect all of that. And thank you, Kevin, once again for joining us and being our first commenter on our live streams. Good night, great talk, and we will see everyone soon. Signing off for now.